In the heart of a mystical African kingdom, where rolling golden savannas met towering baobab trees, a child was born under an ominous sky. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, and the distant rhythm of ceremonial drums echoed through the land. It was a night unlike any other, one foretold by the kingdom's seers long before it arrived. The moon, larger and brighter than ever, was cloaked in a deep crimson hue, a rare celestial event that had only occurred once in the kingdom's recorded history. The people of the land whispered in fear, clutching their charms and uttering prayers, for the elders had long warned that a birth under such a sky would bring misfortune. The infant, a girl named Ayana, took her first breath just as the final drumbeat faded into silence. Her cry was strong, piercing the night like an arrow, but instead of joy, dread filled the room. The village elder, an ancient woman with eyes clouded by wisdom, stepped forward and examined the child with a deep frown. She traced markings in the air, murmuring sacred words, then gasped and recoiled. "This child bears a curse," she declared, her voice barely a whisper but heavy with finality. "She will bring misfortune upon us all." Gasps and murmurs erupted among the gathered midwives and attendants. The child's parents, Bayo and Nia, looked at each other, their hearts clenching with fear and sorrow. Bayo, a strong warrior with the heart of a lion, clenched his fists. Nia, a gentle healer known for her wisdom, held the baby close to her chest as if shielding her from the world's judgment. "What does this mean?" Bayo demanded, his voice laced with a mixture of defiance and fear. "How can an innocent child be cursed?" The elder shook her head solemnly. "The spirits have spoken. She was born under the blood moon, the night when fate is rewritten. Great misfortune will follow wherever she treads. The kingdom will suffer if she remains." A decision had to be made. The tradition was clear. Children born under cursed omens were to be abandoned, given back to the spirits from which they came. But Nia refused. With tears in her eyes, she held Ayana tighter, her resolve unshakable. "She is our daughter," she whispered. "We will raise her with love no matter what the spirits say." Bayo, torn between duty and love, nodded. "Then we will protect her from the world," he said, "and from whatever fate the spirits have chosen for her." Despite their love, Ayana's birth sent waves of fear through the kingdom. Villagers avoided her, whispering behind her back. Children were warned not to play with her. Even the bravest warriors hesitated when they passed her home. But was Ayana truly cursed? Or was there a deeper truth hidden beneath the prophecy? Time would reveal the answer, and when it did, the entire kingdom would be left in awe. Ayana's childhood was unlike that of any other child in the village. While others ran freely through the fields, laughing and playing, she wandered alone, her only companions the whispering wind and the rustling trees. The villagers shunned her, their fear deeply ingrained. Mothers pulled their children away when she walked past, and elders muttered prayers under their breath whenever she was near. The market vendors refused to meet her eyes, their hands trembling as they made protective signs over their wares. She was the child of misfortune, the cursed girl of the blood moon. Her parents did their best to shield her from the world's cruelty, but Ayana felt the weight of her isolation. She spent hours by the river watching the fish dart beneath the surface, longing for a friend. Sometimes she spoke to the trees, pretending they whispered back. The world had decided she was cursed, but she didn't feel cursed, just lonely. Then the first strange thing happened. One evening, after another day of solitude, she sat beneath an ancient baobab tree, tears slipping down her cheeks. The pain of rejection had built inside her like a storm, and as she wept, she barely noticed the change around her. The dry, cracked earth softened beneath her, and tiny green sprouts pushed through the soil. The baobab, whose branches had been barren for months, suddenly flourished with new leaves. The scent of blooming flowers filled the air, and the river, which had been sluggish from the dry season, swelled with fresh, crystal-clear water. When Ayana wiped her tears and looked around, her breath caught in her throat. The world had come to life around her. Days passed and she kept her secret, unsure of what it meant. But soon she noticed something else. One afternoon, as she walked through the fields, she overheard villagers whispering about her again, their voices dripping with fear and suspicion. "She should have been sent away," an old man muttered. "The spirits are watching, and they will punish us for keeping her here." Rage filled Ayana's heart. She clenched her fists, her body trembling. And then the sky darkened. Black clouds swirled overhead, blocking out the sun. A gust of wind howled through the trees, bending them almost to the ground. The villagers ran for cover as the first crack of thunder split the sky. Ayana gasped, her anger vanishing as quickly as it had come. Almost instantly the storm faded, the wind calming, the clouds dissipating into nothingness. She stared at her hands, fear creeping into her heart. That night an old woman appeared at her family's hut. She was draped in a cloak made of woven reeds, her silver hair flowing over her shoulders like a river of moonlight. Her eyes, deep and knowing, settled on Ayana with a gaze that sent shivers down her spine. "You are not cursed, child," the woman murmured, her voice like the rustling leaves. "You are something else entirely." Ayana's heart pounded. "Then what am I?" she whispered. The old woman smiled mysteriously. "That, my dear, is for you to discover." Then, as suddenly as she had come, the woman was gone. Ayana lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, questions swirling in her mind. If she was not cursed, then what was she? And why was she given such power? For the first time, she began to wonder if her fate had been misunderstood all along. Ayana could not shake the old woman's words from her mind. If she was not cursed, then why had she been treated like an outcast her entire life? The villagers feared her, the elders whispered about her, and even her parents, though loving, held a sadness in their eyes when they looked at her. There had to be more to the story. One night, unable to contain her curiosity any longer, she made a decision. The sacred temple sat at the heart of the kingdom, an ancient structure carved from stone and covered in vines that pulsed with the wisdom of centuries. No one outside the temple priest was allowed inside, for it was said to hold the secrets of the gods. But Ayana had never been one to follow rules meant to keep her in the shadows. If there were answers, she would find them. Under the cover of darkness, she moved silently through the village, her bare feet gliding over the dirt paths she had walked since childhood. The guards who patrolled the temple were known for their unwavering loyalty, but tonight, the stars seemed to align in her favor. A sudden gust of wind sent leaves swirling into the air, momentarily distracting the sentry stationed at the entrance. In that split second, Ayana slipped through the temple doors. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of burning incense and aged parchment. Tall pillars loomed over her, etched with the stories of gods and warriors long forgotten. Her fingers trembled as she ran them along the stone walls, her eyes scanning for something, anything, that would tell her the truth. Then she saw it. At the far end of the temple, hidden behind a golden tapestry, was a scroll sealed with a symbol she had seen only once before, the mark of the celestial event under which she had been born. Her pulse quickened. This was it. With careful hands she broke the seal and unrolled the parchment. The words were ancient, their meaning shrouded in mystery, but as she traced each line, she began to understand. When the moon bleeds and the stars whisper, a child shall be born with the power of the gods. Feared by many, misunderstood by all, they shall hold the fate of the kingdom in their hands. Not a destroyer but a protector. Not a curse but a blessing. When darkness rises, only the child of the celestial night shall bring the light. Ayana's breath hitched. She read the passage again, then again, as realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. This prophecy, this destiny, was about her. She had been told she was cursed, a child of misfortune, but all along she had been the opposite. She was not meant to bring destruction. She was meant to bring salvation. Her mind raced. If she was the protector the prophecy spoke of, then that meant something else was coming, something dangerous enough to threaten the entire kingdom. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the scroll. For years she had lived believing she was unwanted, unworthy. But now she knew the truth. Her powers were not a sign of darkness, they were a gift of light. And it was time the kingdom learned the truth too. The kingdom trembled beneath the weight of impending doom. Dark banners flew in the distance, their fabrics snapping like the cries of a coming storm. At the horizon, dust rose in thick, curling waves, stirred by the boots of thousands of warriors marching toward the kingdom's gates. The warlord, a merciless conqueror named Okuta, had sent his message days prior: surrender or be reduced to ashes. The people cowered in fear, whispering among themselves that the warlord's arrival was no coincidence. It was Ayana's curse. The elders met in hushed gatherings, their faces drawn with worry. "We should have cast her out long ago," one muttered. "She has doomed us all," another spat. None dared to say it where the king could hear, but even he, the wise and noble ruler, seemed troubled. Though he had never believed in curses, even he could not deny the timing. On the palace steps, he addressed his people, his voice steady despite the weight pressing upon his shoulders. "We will fight," he declared. "We will not surrender our home to tyrants." Cheers erupted from those who still held faith, but deep in their hearts they knew they were hopelessly outnumbered. Beyond the city walls, in the forgotten corner of the kingdom where she had spent most of her life, Ayana sat alone. She had heard the whispers. She had seen the way people flinched at the sight of her, how they turned their backs even now when they feared for their lives. Did they deserve her help? For years they had cast her aside, branding her a curse, an omen of misfortune. Now they were staring into the face of true disaster, and the same people who had abandoned her would rather believe in an old superstition than face the real threat. Bitterness curled in her chest. Why should she fight for them when they had never fought for her? As if summoned by her doubt, the old woman appeared once more. She moved like the wind, silent, steady, untouched by the years. Her piercing gaze settled on Ayana as she took a seat beside her, folding her hands in her lap. "You have a choice to make, child," the woman said softly. Ayana clenched her fists. "Why should I fight for them? They left me to suffer." They are afraid," the woman interrupted. "Fear makes fools of even the strongest hearts." She reached out, brushing a lock of Ayana's hair behind her ear, her touch light as falling leaves. "You were born not to be feared but to lead. The prophecy speaks of a protector, and that protector is you." Ayana exhaled sharply, her mind warring with itself. "But how? I don't even understand the extent of my powers. I cannot control them. I can barely understand them." A slow smile spread across the woman's face. "That is why I am here." She reached into the folds of her cloak and pulled out a small vial filled with a shimmering golden liquid. "This," she said, "will awaken the full potential of your gift. But be warned, power is not simply given, it must be accepted." Ayana stared at the vial, her heart pounding. If she took it, she would be stepping into a future she had never envisioned for herself. She would be embracing a destiny she had been running from all her life. But if she didn't? She closed her eyes. In her mind she saw the village, the place that had shunned her. But she also saw the children playing in the streets, the mothers carrying their babies, the farmers who toiled under the hot sun. They were more than just those who had feared her. They were people. And they were going to die if she did nothing. When Ayana opened her eyes, determination burned within them. She reached for the vial and without hesitation, drank every last drop. The moment the golden liquid touched Ayana's tongue, a surge of warmth spread through her veins, pulsing with ancient power. She gasped, clutching her chest as her body trembled. The world around her blurred and she felt herself being pulled into a different realm, a place between the past and the present, between reality and myth. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer in her village. She stood in the center of an endless field, where the sky swirled with shifting colors, neither day nor night. The ground beneath her feet hummed with energy, and in the distance she saw a figure waiting for her. The old woman. But she no longer looked frail. Instead, she radiated power, her robes flowing as if caught in an unseen wind. Her eyes glowed like the stars, ancient and knowing. "Welcome, Ayana," the woman said, her voice layered with echoes of the past. "The time has come for you to learn the truth." Ayana swallowed hard, her heart pounding. What is this place? This is the realm of the ancestors, the place where all truths are revealed. The old woman lifted her hand, and the air between them shimmered. Suddenly visions erupted before Ayana's eyes, unfolding like pages of a forgotten story. She saw herself as a newborn, cradled in her mother's arms. She saw the village elder, his face twisted in fear as he pointed at her, proclaiming her cursed. But then the vision shifted. She saw the elder again, but this time he was speaking in secret, whispering to shadowed figures dressed in dark robes. She listened carefully, her breath catching in her throat. "It is her," the elder said. "The child of the prophecy. If she grows into her power, she will change everything. The kingdom will no longer be in our hands." One of the figures stepped forward, his face hidden beneath a hood. "Then she must be feared. The people must turn against her before she becomes a threat." Ayana's blood turned to ice. The curse, it was never real. It had been a lie from the beginning. Tears burned her eyes as she turned to the old woman, her voice shaking. "They did this to me? They made me believe I was a monster?" The woman stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on Ayana's shoulder. "Yes," she said softly. "Because they knew what you truly are." Another vision appeared, this time of Ayana standing atop a mountain, the sky raging above her. But she was not afraid. Her arms were raised, and with a single motion she commanded the storm, bending it to her will. Rivers flowed where there had been drought, crops flourished where there had been famine. She was not a curse. She was a force of nature itself. "You were never meant to destroy," the old woman continued. "You were meant to restore. Your power is a gift, passed down by the spirits of the land. The elders feared you because they could not control you. They knew that if you embraced your destiny, their rule would end. Ayana's chest tightened. All these years, all the pain, the isolation, it had all been a lie to keep her weak. A deep fury welled up inside her, but she took a shaky breath. Anger would not serve her now. Only action would. "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions within her. The old woman smiled. "That is up to you. You must decide, will you embrace what you were born to be? Or will you turn away and let fear dictate your path?" Ayana closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the choice before her. For the first time she truly understood. She was not bound by the words of those who had feared her. She was not a curse. She was a force of life itself. And she would no longer run from it. The first war drums echoed across the valley as the sun dipped beneath the horizon. A sea of armored warriors stretched as far as the eye could see, their torches flickering like restless fireflies against the darkening sky. The warlord, a towering figure clad in jagged black armor, sat atop a massive warhorse, his cold eyes fixed on the walls of the kingdom. His voice, deep and commanding, boomed across the battlefield. "Your time has come, King Omari. Surrender your throne, and I may spare your people." The king, standing atop the battlements, gripped the hilt of his sword. His face, lined with age and regret, held little hope. His army was outnumbered 5-1, their defenses weakened by years of complacency. He had always believed his kingdom was untouchable, until now. Within the castle walls, fear rippled through the people. Mothers clutched their children, warriors tightened their grips on their spears, and whispers of doom spread like wildfire. And then she arrived. Ayana stood at the entrance of the castle, the wind swirling around her like a protective cloak. Gone was the frightened girl who had spent her life in exile. In her place stood a force of nature, her eyes gleaming with the light of the ancestors. She took a deep breath, stepping forward. The guards at the gate hesitated. Even now they feared her. "You cannot go out there," one of them pleaded. "That warlord, he will kill you." Ayana's voice was calm but firm. "No," she said. "He will try." She pushed past them, walking toward the battlefield. As she moved, the earth trembled beneath her feet, and the sky above began to shift. Clouds swirled, charged with energy, the air thick with the scent of rain. The warlord's second-in-command squinted at the lone figure approaching. "Is that a girl?" he scoffed. The warlord sneered. "Let her come. This kingdom is full of fools who think they can stand against me. She will be the first to fall." But as Ayana stepped onto the battlefield, something strange happened. The very wind seemed to answer her presence, whipping through the ranks of the enemy, sending dust and debris into their eyes. The ground beneath them quivered, tiny cracks forming as the earth itself seemed to wake. The warlord frowned. "What sorcery is this?" Ayana raised her hands, and with a single motion, the storm answered. A deafening crack of thunder split the sky, followed by a bolt of lightning that struck the ground just inches from the warlord's horse. The beast reared back, nearly throwing its rider. Panic rippled through the enemy's ranks. The warlord's face twisted in rage. "Kill her," he roared. The first wave of soldiers rushed forward. Ayana closed her eyes, drawing upon the power within her. The ground beneath them shifted violently, sending many tumbling to their knees. She swept her hand through the air, and suddenly the rivers that had once been dry surged forth, crashing through the battlefield like a living serpent, swallowing enemy soldiers whole. The people watching from the castle walls gasped in disbelief. The cursed girl, the one they had cast aside, was wielding the very forces of nature to defend them. The warlord, refusing to be undone, charged forward himself. His blade gleamed under the stormy sky as he raised it high, aiming to strike her down. Ayana did not flinch. Instead, she whispered to the wind. A sudden gust knocked the warlord off his horse, slamming him into the mud. He coughed, struggling to rise, but the earth beneath him hardened like stone, holding him in place. He looked up, his once unshakable confidence now replaced by fear. Ayana stood over him, her eyes glowing with an ethereal light. "You sought to bring ruin to this kingdom," she said. "But fate had other plans." The warlord snarled, but he could not move. Ayana turned to the enemy soldiers. "Leave now," she commanded, her voice resonating with power, "or suffer the wrath of the storm." They hesitated for only a moment before dropping their weapons and fleeing. The battlefield, once filled with the sounds of war, fell silent. The gates of the castle burst open as the king and his guards rushed forward. The people of the kingdom spilled onto the battlefield, their faces painted with astonishment. The king stared at Ayana, the realization dawning upon him like the rising sun. You saved us," he murmured. Ayana met his gaze. I saved my home. A murmur spread through the crowd, quickly turning into cheers. The very people who had once shunned her now chanted her name. The king took a deep breath before stepping closer. I was wrong, he admitted. All these years I allowed fear to blind me. I cast you away when I should have embraced you as a daughter of this land. He knelt before her, bowing his head. Ayana, I ask for your forgiveness. Tears welled in her eyes, but she stood tall. I do not seek vengeance, she said. Only change. The king nodded. Then let that change begin today. Ayana, will you stand by my side and help guide this kingdom? The people fell silent, awaiting her answer. Ayana looked out at them. The faces that had once turned away now filled with admiration and hope. She had spent her life searching for belonging, for a purpose beyond the shadows of exile. And now, standing in the heart of her kingdom, she had found it. She took a deep breath and smiled. Yes. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the kingdom, washing away the darkness of war. A gentle breeze carried the scent of wet earth and blooming flowers, signaling renewal. The people who had once cowered behind stone walls, now stood in the open streets, their faces filled with awe and gratitude. Ayana stood at the castle's highest balcony, gazing down at the land she had just saved. She had never sought power, nor had she desired revenge for the years of exile and loneliness. But now she understood that her destiny had always been greater than herself. The king stood beside her, the weight of his past mistakes evident in his tired eyes. He turned to her, his voice filled with sincerity. You have given us back our future, Ayana. How can we ever repay you? She looked at him not as a ruler, but as a man who had allowed fear to guide his choices. By ensuring that no child suffers as I did, she said. By ending the fear of magic and embracing the balance it brings. The people below erupted in cheers, their voices merging into a song of unity. Ayana, the girl once feared, was now their hope. As the day unfolded, Ayana set forth a new decree. Magic, once condemned as a curse, would now be honored as a gift. She walked among the people, teaching them that nature was not meant to be feared, but understood. She stood before the farmers whose fields had withered under the old king's rule. With a touch to the soil, she called forth rain, restoring the earth's life. The farmers knelt before her in gratitude, vowing to never again see magic as evil. In the great marketplace, where merchants had once whispered rumors of her curse, she spoke of balance. For every force in this world there is an opposite, she said. Fire can destroy, but it can also give warmth. Water can drown, but it can also nourish. Magic is no different. The people listened, their minds opening to a new understanding. Then came the most unexpected moment of all. The warlord's remaining followers who had fled after the battle returned. But not to fight. They came unarmed, their weapons left behind, their faces weary. Their leader, a battle-hardened warrior named Django, stepped forward and knelt. We were deceived, he said. We believed in power through fear, but we have seen what true strength looks like. We ask for forgiveness. Ayana studied them carefully. The kingdom had suffered under their attacks, and the people had every reason to demand justice. But she had learned that justice was not found in punishment, it was found in change. You must earn your place among us, she said. You will rebuild what you helped destroy. You will protect this land not with swords but with your hands and hearts. Django and his warriors accepted without hesitation. They worked alongside the villagers, rebuilding homes, replanting fields, and restoring what had been lost. In time they were no longer enemies, they were brothers and sisters of the land. As the kingdom flourished, Ayana continued to bridge the divide between the mortal and the spiritual world. She journeyed to the temple where she had once discovered the prophecy, seeking the wisdom of the ancestors. There she spoke to the spirits who had watched over the kingdom for centuries. The people have begun to understand, she said. But fear does not disappear overnight. What more must be done? A voice, soft as the wind, answered. Walk among them, guide them. Let them see that magic is not a force apart from them, but within them. And so she did. She traveled across the kingdom, healing the sick, calming the storms, bringing life to barren lands. Where there was suffering, she brought peace. Where there was division, she brought unity. Years passed, and under her guidance, the kingdom entered a golden age. Trade flourished, villages prospered, and no child was ever cast aside for being different. The king, now older, gathered his council and declared, Ayana is not just our savior. She is the guardian of this land, the bridge between worlds. A grand ceremony was held, and before the eyes of the entire kingdom, Ayana was crowned as the protector of the land. But power had never been her goal. As she stood before her people, she spoke not of rulership but of purpose. "I was once told I was a curse," she said, "that my birth brought doom. But the truth is we make our own fates. And now together we will shape a future built not on fear but on balance." The people roared in agreement, their voices echoing into the heavens. And so, Ayana's name became legend, not as a girl cursed at birth, but as the light that led her people into a new dawn. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues over the kingdom that had once lived in fear. The people gathered in the central square, where a great storyteller stood upon a raised platform, ready to recount the tale of their greatest guardian. Children sat cross-legged on the ground, their eyes wide with anticipation. Elders listened in quiet reverence. The storyteller began, his voice weaving through the air like a gentle breeze. Long ago, a child was born under the rarest of celestial events. The sky burned with fire and the earth trembled, and so the people feared her. They called her cursed, cast her away, and waited for disaster to strike. The crowd murmured in recognition. They knew this story well, it was their history. But fate does not always bend to fear, the storyteller continued. For this child Ayana did not bring ruin. She brought life. She brought wisdom. And in time, she brought salvation to the very people who once cast her aside. Ayana stood at the edge of the gathering, watching the story unfold through another's voice. It was strange hearing her life retold as legend. She had lived it, felt every hardship, every heartbreak, and yet now, it had become something greater than herself, a lesson passed from one generation to the next. Her journey had not been easy. She had been told she was cursed before she even understood what it meant. She had spent years wondering if the whispers of the villagers were true. Was she truly destined to bring misfortune? Or was she simply a victim of misunderstanding? It took her years to find the truth. The prophecy, the trials, the war, they had all led her to a single realization. People fear what they do not understand. The warlord had feared losing power, so he sought to control others through force. The villagers had feared Ayana's birth, so they had pushed her away. Even the king, a man of great wisdom, had allowed fear to guide his decisions. But fear, Ayana had learned, was a choice. A curse is only real if you believe in it, the storyteller declared. But the truth, once revealed, can change everything. The words resonated through the crowd. A young girl no older than 10 stood up and asked, "But why did they fear her if she was never a curse?" Ayana smiled, stepping forward. The storyteller bowed his head in respect as she took the stage. She turned to the young girl, seeing a reflection of herself in those bright, questioning eyes. "They feared me because they did not understand me," Ayana said gently. "When people do not understand something, they assume the worst. They call it dangerous. They call it unnatural. But I was never a danger, I was simply different." The young girl tilted her head. "So how do we stop being afraid?" "By seeking to understand," Ayana answered. "By listening before judging. By asking questions instead of making assumptions." A hush fell over the crowd. These were simple words, yet they carried the weight of generations. She looked out over the people, the same ones who had once whispered behind her back. Now they gazed at her with respect, admiration, even love. The wounds of the past had healed, but the lessons remained. "Long ago my name was spoken in fear," Ayana continued. "Now it is spoken in honor. Not because I proved them wrong, but because they chose to open their hearts to the truth." The people nodded, their expressions solemn. "As long as fear rules our hearts, we will always find enemies," she said. "But if we seek to understand, we will find allies instead." An elder stepped forward, his voice shaking with emotion. "And you, Ayana, will always be our greatest teacher." A roaring cheer erupted from the crowd. As the celebration carried into the night, Ayana retreated to the temple where her journey had truly begun. She knelt before the great altar, tracing her fingers over the ancient carvings. The voice of the guardian spirit whispered to her once more, "You have fulfilled your purpose, child. But your story is far from over." She smiled. "I know. There is always more to learn, more to teach." With a final glance at the stars that had once sealed her fate, Ayana stood, ready to walk into a future no longer bound by fear.